Okay, now that was a very interesting story, and it brings us on really to look at, someone in a managerial position, they might agree with you that participation is a good thing, but they've also got to get the job done, and they haven't got necessarily time to do all this. So a lot of people experience that, and of course games theory says, there are two forms of basic organising in society. One is the benevolent dictator or the aristocracy, which is fairly wise, and then Plato would like to have them as wise as possible, which goes back to your sociologists.
Sure.
Or you have democracy, but then, how do you get things done with democracy? So I think that's a very interesting question, and Edinburgh, if I get his name correctly, must have addressed that. So I'd like to hear about how sociocracy helps with that question, particularly. It explains what it is a little bit.
Sure, and I think I would argue that there's more than just two kinds of organizing, but I don't want to go down that path just because here we are, stay on the subject as much as possible.
No, but you say there are four. That's fine. I want to hear what you say.
Okay, that's great. Well, the part that I want to focus on is this top-down hierarchy. It is true that top-down systems are very good at serving as a kind of megaphone. They amplify whatever it is the person at the top of the hierarchy is doing. There's this illusion of unilateral control, like the person on top gets to determine everything that happens. That's an illusion, but it is true that the hierarchy serves as an amplifier. So they may not get to control everything that happens, but they do influence things widely. And that's a good thing. It's good to be able to do that. The value in a hierarchy, and here is not so much in the dominance hierarchy, big man get to run show. It's and it's in the hierarchy of abstraction. And what I mean when I say a hierarchy of abstraction is that at the top levels of an organizational hierarchy, you want to be paying attention to the big picture. What is our overall strategy? Who do we need to connect with over the next year, the next 5 years to really grow our business? What are we all about? What is our identity? Now, you can have input from all levels of the organization into that conversation, but it's important that that conversation be distinguished as a high level of abstraction conversation, and that you have somebody who's responsible for making sure that that conversation is conducted skillfully and consistently over time. Now, there's a level of conversation immediately below that, slightly less abstract or more concrete. And that next level down you might call the executive level of conversation. And that is, how are we going to take our identity and our top level strategy and actually go about implementing it in the world? And so this is where coordination for the organization as a whole takes place. And this is another crucial level of abstraction. And again, you can have input and conversation, information flow through this level, but you want to make sure that at least one person is wholly responsible for keeping that flowing smoothly. And there may be additional layers of coordination depending on the size of your enterprise. But in a relatively small enterprise, let's say one team, you can have one or more people who are handling this board level conversation. That's the top visionary strategy. One person who's serving in this coordinator or executive role, and then one or more people whose job it is to deliver value to the customer. And that's enough. 3 levels of abstraction is enough to run any organization. Now, I say any organization. If you have a sufficiently large organization, then you might want to differentiate some additional coordination levels. But again, I'm not going to get into the additional complexity there. So I've gotten into talking about these levels of abstraction because I'm talking about the value of hierarchy. But the classic error is to say, aha, hierarchy is valuable. We have to be able to have clearly accountable delegation, and we have to be able to, send signals from this strategy level down to the shop floor and have them be heard and coordinated. So that's it. That's a classic error, and people who are sharp, good management theorists and good business people will say, that's not the whole story. That top level needs to be very careful about monitoring and measuring what's happening at the bottom level too. Which is true, but there's something that people don't understand, which is that if the top level is solely responsible for that measurement process, then any flaws in their thinking, anywhere that they might be unconscious, is going to be reflected in how they go about measuring. And I promise you, every one of us has flaws in our thinking. Every one of us has, limits, mental patterns. This is the nature of being the kind of being that we are.
Yeah.
And so the way that you handle that is you ensure that every level of the organization has the ability, not just the ability to write a letter, but the ability to send a message that cannot be ignored, that forces people on other levels of the organization to listen until it's heard.